Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Stacy Moore.
And with us today is...
Garrett Eberhardt.
Hey Garrett, what movie are we going to overanalyze today?
We are going to be overanalyzing Blockers.
Yes, when 3 high school seniors agree to lose their virginity on prom night, their parents embark on a quest to keep that very thing from happening. What do we think?
I guess I'll go first. I liked it. It was a pretty good movie. It didn't really... So it covered, I think, the spectrum of losing virginity and how that works with, gender norms and the culture within America. It didn't go one way or the other. It really covered all sides. And the jokes, they're pretty funny. There were a lot of laugh out loud moments, so I enjoyed it.
What did you think, Stacy?
I wanted to like it more than I did like it.
Okay.
You know, the cast are all kind of familiar faces from the kind of the Judd Apatow school. And, you know, a lot of them are very likable. I'm a huge Ike Barinholtz fan. I think I've mentioned that before. John Cena and Leslie Mann are both, you know, very funny actors. Hannibal Buress, you know, but I didn't laugh as much as I would have liked to. There were a lot of sweet moments, and I did appreciate the discourse that happened about, you know, gender roles and double standards. But gosh, I just would have liked to have laughed more. How about you?
Yeah, I got a lot of feels. I did, and I'll come back to that. So let's talk comedy, right? Like, comedies usually don't get a very favorable viewing from critics, and they're usually harder. But the thing about comedy is there's different types, and different people like different types of comedy. This is classified, I guess, as raunchy style, which isn't one that's particularly effective or funny to me. Okay. And it also had a fair amount of gross out humor, which I don't find funny at all. Like, you get no mileage for me when everybody puking in a limo.
Although I have to say, one of the few moments I laughed was that kid who was like rolling off his face, reacting to everyone puking in the limo.
Yes.
That actually got to me.
Yes, and I will say the thing that I do find funnier than any other kind of funny is physical comedy, which this had a lot of. So I was laughing like, again, if you fall down, I'm in. It's hilarious. So physical comedy is absolutely my favorite. All the Ike Barinholtz scenes, like knocking into that kid, were hilarious. Like, people getting hit, I'm good with.
Sure.
Although I don't think that isn't Leslie Mann's forte. And the couple of things she had to do, I didn't think were very good. Yeah. She was the problem at the whole center of this movie for me.
You think?
Yeah. What did you think, Garrett?
I like the comedy. I agree with Stacy that I thought it would be there'd be more laughs and it would pretty much last throughout. Ike Barinholtz was the funniest person in the movie by far to me. Mm-hmm. He had the most consistently funny lines. The physical comedy, I'm not a huge physical comedy guy. I feel like it's, a little easier to get laughs that way. But there was a good balance in here. So it wasn't too much of a physical comedy. It was there when appropriate. So I like that. But yeah, I agree with Stacy. I thought there would be more laughs, but the laughs that were there, they were pretty good, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I started tearing up hardcore when Ike Barinholtz gave his speech, and the other two are like completely ignoring him about like, you don't know what my marriage was like. And I was like, and then like when Leslie Mann looked at John Cena and was like, well, you don't really know what it's like to have a kid because you didn't carry one inside her. I wanted to bitch slap her so hard for saying that.
That was pretty insensitive. And when they both ignore his I think you just mentioned they both ignore when Ike Barinholtz is kind of like opening his heart to them, and it's supposed to be funny, but I was just kind of like, God, you guys are awful. You two are so mean.
Yeah. I mean, I just found her character unbearable. There was nothing, I didn't like anything about her. I actually didn't feel remotely sympathetic for her.
I agree. Yeah. It was a little much into like the whole her taking her baggage and putting it on her daughter, and there wasn't a lot of redeemability there. She learned something at the end, but like you're saying, her character wasn't really redeemable at all, like during the course of the film.
Right, and she's awful to Ike Barinholtz. She's awful to John Cena, who just seems like such a nice guy, and is like, just return, like, why won't you return my phone calls? Like, I don't like Leslie Mann.
That was just kind of thin writing, though. Like at the beginning when he's like saying, I called you, why didn't you call me back? I honestly thought there was going to be like some kind of like romantic thing there, that she had been into him and like didn't, wanted to like put space there. I thought there'd be something more than just, I didn't like seeing pictures of you on Facebook because it reminded me of when my daughter liked me. Like, I was just like, that's not a real thing that would happen.
Yeah.
And apparently I had to look this up. I did just see the movie, but I looked up who wrote and directed it, and they were both people who just had like really thin track records, like really it was a first time director. The writers, I think, wrote Miss Congeniality 3.
No, the director was did she just write Pitch Perfect? She didn't direct it?
She wrote some and I think produced it, but she didn't direct it yet.
Okay, she didn't direct it.
Well, I just felt like that inexperience showed. It wasn't particularly well written or directed.
I mean, it was competently directed. I did think the Jurassic Park moment with when they're in the house and they're like the sexy parents are like stumbling around playing their sex game, and then you see the water in the glass as they're getting closer. I was like, that was funny. Yeah, nice inside film joke. But I think the editing for a comedy could have been tighter. Or not tighter.
Just funnier?
Yeah, like just cutting to certain scenes or like holding that extra beat and letting things play out across people's faces. It was just very sort of shot, like very by the numbers. And I just thought, okay, fine. Like this is adequately done. But, again, like people act like, oh, all the cinematography and drama has to be in serious movies. That's not true. Like you can do a lot with comedies, and plenty of directors have. Like this wasn't one of the ones that I thought was... The
Hangover was a beautiful film.
Yeah. I don't know. Thoughts on technique?
I agree with you that it was very by the numbers. Nothing really stuck out. So I guess that's why I don't have anything to say about the technique. It was, pretty cut and dry. There wasn't much innovative or that really stood out about it, so I couldn't understand that complaint. Yeah.
Well, like Stacy said, when talking about like seeing somebody's expression on the face, like a couple of those actors, like you could have held a few longer beats of them, watching in the window of all the things that John Cena ends up doing, and they don't allow it didn't allow the actors to really milk a moment before it was on to the next thing, on to the next joke.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Like it was, as you said, it was competently directed, and it would have been a fine not comedy, but it wasn't a fine comedy to me. I felt like the way that, like as you say, like she being Kay Cannon didn't have her timing down. Like it,
right? And that's everything in comedy.
Sorry.
And that's everything in comedy, right?
Yeah, timing exactly.
Is it.
And then there were just sort of like less tangible things, like Leslie Mann getting electrocuted behind the TV. That should have been funny, but it just looked like distressing. Like it just looked like, oh no, a woman just got electrocuted. I hope she's okay.
Yeah, she didn't. Yeah, that would be her biggest fail for me on the physical comedy. Like, she didn't make that funny.
She didn't sell it enough.
No, she didn't.
She just collapsed for a second, then just got back up.
Yeah, it just didn't come off.
Yeah.
I agree. I did think, though, surprisingly, I thought the opening montage of the sort of home videos of the little girls was extremely effective.
I thought that was good too, yeah.
Yeah, like really established a lot about the girls and their parents and their relationship in remarkably short order. Like,
yeah, that was a good touch. I liked it too.
Yeah, but I will say the saving grace of this entire movie had to have been those three girls.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, their relationship and seeing how it evolved, and then their own feelings on how those evolved and what was driving them towards the sex pact really did add a lot of punch to the movie, I think. Particularly like emotionally and in terms of character development too.
I was just going to say that I just thought their chemistry was spot on. Like, they were believably three friends who had grown up together. Like, they interacted really well. They had that on-screen chemistry that made their roles believable.
Yeah, and they were full characters, right? They each had their own personalities, and even though they were so different, you could see how they kind of like fit together and what was driving. Garrett, to your point, like the sex pact was believable. Like when I kind of going in, I was like, I don't really, do girls do that? But it actually made sense as it played out, and they were. It was kind of a joy to watch them be themselves in the face of this sort of like paternalistic, oppression kind of happening around them and to them.
Yeah, and there were some great moments, like just the whole time they were at the prom itself, the guys are kind of sidelined. Like, they're all kind of dancing with each other. They're not even dancing with their dates. And I just thought it was a really I really felt for them and their friendship. And I will say, and I'm curious, we will be careful with editing if need be, but I'm curious to hear y'all's prom stories and how well the prom in this movie matched up to your prom. For me, I would actually say this is like cinematically the closest movie of a prom to like what actually happens where I'm from of any movie I've ever seen. I'm like, I don't know anyone who had a prom in a gym. Like, we did not do that in my high school.
Right.
And I think
there's we went to like a hotel banquet, right?
Right. And there's like a quick line where someone's like, I can't believe we paid $85 for that. And it was like, real talk. My prom tickets were like extremely expensive at the time. And then it was just an excuse for the after party too, which was the bigger deal in this movie. And I was like, man, they got a lot of things right about my prom, which happened longer ago than I care to admit.
They did. And the kids all looked like kids. Like, they actually looked like teenagers. It didn't look like 24-year-olds kind of like playing down their makeup or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Prom thoughts, Garrett?
I didn't go to my prom.
Okay.
But you're right. Like, that's something I haven't thought about. Like, proms are no longer held in gyms. The after party and what you do after prom is more important. So yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I can speak to that. That's a good observation.
And I will say, for the character of Kayla, most closely duplicate my actual prom. For anybody out there who was in that limo with me, I still apologize for. I was pretty high. So yeah, I thought it was like refreshing to see something that wasn't just straight out of some weird 1950s playbook that stopped being true even in the 80s when it was reproduced.
Right. Streamers across the gym.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I feel like every single prom ever in a movie was based on the one in Back to the Future, which was set in the 50s, right?
Right, yeah.
And I don't know who else noticed this. When the mom first goes into her daughter's room and she's looking at the laptop, there's a poster of Pretty in Pink.
I was trying to figure out what that was.
Yeah.
It was Pretty in Pink?
Yeah.
Got it. It was too blurry. Like, the whole time I know I was supposed to be watching Leslie Mann's reaction, and I wasn't. I was like squinting over her shoulder at that blurry poster trying to figure out what movie that was.
Yeah, it was pretty big. And I was like, yeah, nicely done. Nod to the past. So, and to me, the other movie that stuck out the most on the sex pack thing was, of course, American Pie.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to have a sex comedy from girls' perspective.
Yes. So what did we think about the sex comedy from the girls' perspective? How do you think they handled female sexuality in this movie?
I think from the girls themselves, I thought it was well done. And they said the things that I think teenagers today would say. I think the nervousness and the pressures that the girls felt in terms of losing the virginity still rings true. And I thought it was pretty well done. But, of course, you guys' voices would be more important on this. You would know more than I.
Okay, well, we'll let you chime in on the guys' perspective when we get there. What did you think, Stacy?
I liked that the three girls had such different feelings
right.
about losing their virginity and sex in general. You had the one girl that's, she's in love and she's ready to go. She wants to make love to this guy and that she cares about. And then you had the other girl is like, you know what? I just want to get this out of the way. He's cute. He'll do. And which, great. And then but later she decides like, I'm not ready. Can you wait till Monday? And he's like, sure. And like that, I thought that was refreshing. And then of course you have the third who would prefer the company of women. So like I appreciated that a lot. That it wasn't just the three of them all wanting to do this one same cookie cutter thing. Like they each had their own sentiments that they were operating from.
Yeah, I thought I thought it was so well handled. First of all, when is the daughter Julie, when she comes running out and they're like, what was it like? And her description of it was like, it was weird and it was kind of painful and then it was over, but also it was amazing, or like it was wonderful. I was
yeah, I liked that.
That I did too. And I thought like, that's sort of a very realistic description of how it goes. And it doesn't, I don't know. I really appreciated like all of the things that were in that mix of like, she's totally happy she did it. She had a good time, but it was still like the first time and it wasn't perfect and it wasn't like this amazing like sensual experience, which is unrealistic, but it's not unrealistic to think that it can be a positive experience. The only thing I always say, like, no one ever tells you how messy it is. If you're a young person listening to this podcast, let me just warn you ahead of time. It's just a lot messier than you think it's going to be. Just throwing that out there. You're forewarned. It's just messy.
There's so many things they never told us. So many things.
I know. I'm like keeping it clean. I don't want to have to hit the explicit button. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm like, it's just messy. Be prepared for that. It kind of kills the romance a little bit. And I also thought, like you said, like their experiences were so well established in the character driven, where the one girl, Kayla, is like, she's so sort of empowered. She so knows what she wants. And she's like, well, I don't want to have sex, but you can definitely go down on me. And I was like, get it, girl. Like, and you never see that I can't even think of a time I've seen that in a teenage movie. Now, I'm not like an expert on every teenage movie these days. I kind of stopped watching most of them. But like, I cannot think of a single other time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't even really make them anymore, honestly. Yeah, but no, I was surprised by that as well when she basically said, "Hey, you want to just go to third base," and he was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Good for her for just saying I would enjoy this. What do you say?" And he's like, "All right."
Yeah. So for the most part, except for maybe kind of one guy, Garrett, none of the dudes have like any agency in this process whatsoever.
Right, which is, so it's a comedy, so they want to keep it lighthearted. But, it it was a little weird that none of the girls felt pressured from guys to lose their virginities. Particularly, someone like the lead young lady. She had a longtime boyfriend, and like there seemed to be like no pressure, any drive whatsoever from him. Right. She seemed to be the one that was initiating it. So that was a little weird not to see. But then again, like I said, it's a comedy, so they may not want to get into the issues with feeling pressured from boys and how girls react to that. So that was a little different, and something that may not be true to life. Because the pressures from young boys who are also eager to lose their virginity and may not be as gentle about it, I guess I should say. Well,
it's implied at least the one kid, Connor, who they call the chef because he bakes drugs into everything, which I thought... Actually, I think those were the funniest bits to me. Every time he describes a concoction that he's made, where he's made this like amazing macaron, right? Yeah. This like French pastry that's very hard to make, and it's like raspberry filling or whatnot, and like all the drugs he put in it, like
flavored profile.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like everything he talked about how he made the drug. I actually thought those bits were really funny, and it's implied that he has actually lost his virginity. Mm-hmm. But that the other two guys haven't. And the one guy is just really excited that any girl like even went to prom with him. Right. So.
Yeah. And it could be that so the girlfriend, the one who has a boyfriend and actually has been planning this for a long time. It's we meet his parents and find out that he's been living in a very sex positive household.
Yes.
Right. They're all very open and they talk about it. And so I presume he's not being presented as your average teenage boy.
That didn't connect to anything. Like the parents are used for the sex positivity was used for their comedy, but then he's kind of the guy you see the least of in this movie. Yeah. That boyfriend doesn't really have any parts. You have the chef and the like kind of crazy theater kid who's with the date of Sam, who's trying to figure out if in fact she is a lesbian. So a lot more about his parents than about him, which I just was like, I don't need to know this much about. Like it didn't connect up for me. But I did think, I mean, realistic or not, I think that the movie did which was so important and so critical, was model 3 very different versions of affirmative consent.
Oh, right? Sure. Yeah.
So you have the boyfriend and girlfriend couple who, she does seem to be driving the train a little bit. But there's lots of like planning ahead, knowing we're going to do this. As Garrett said, there's no pressure. You have the chef and his like sporty girlfriend who's decided that she's gonna like go out of character and explore her sexuality, and she's driving this train the whole time, right? Like he like is just sort of he has sort of the least agency, but is just very much like goes along with whatever she wants, and she tells him, right? She models the woman who says, I do want to have sex. Then she changes her mind and says, I don't want to have sex. And then she says, but we can do other stuff. Like there's no woman in this, none of the girls in the movie ever give you sort of the half-hearted, no means yes. Like, and nor is she portrayed or seen or thought of as a slut. Like there's nothing slutty about the way she's presented, right? Like she gets really forceful about, no, your penis is going in my vagina. And it's like, it's played for laughs. Mm-hmm.
And like they played it like at first as if there's a possibility he might turn her down.
Yeah.
Because, she kept saying, no, this is going to happen. He's like, okay, if you say so. She's like, no, this is happening tonight. You're going to do it. Like you don't have an option. Which at first I thought it was going to go in the direction of him not wanting to, but they ended up not doing that.
Yeah, right. I wondered about that. That's how you read it too, right? Or he's saying, we'll see. I was thinking, is he just not attracted to her? Did they, was this a crossed wires thing, or? But they didn't really play that out. He was just being laid back.
Right.
But he's not turned off by it. Like he's not like, oh great, I got this slutty girl, and he's also not like, oh, like high-fiving all his friends because he's like, oh man, I totally got this girl who's gonna like put out tonight. And then I think like sort of best of all is it Chad in his fedora?
Yeah.
Like literally the reason that they don't have sex is because every little step of the way he senses her discomfort and he's like, are you sure? Are you sure? I'm getting very close. Are you still okay with this? Like, I'm about to do this thing. Like, he gives her multiple chances to back out when she finally does. Like, he's been given the green light several times, which he doesn't use and keeps checking in with her repeatedly. Which I thought, I was just really happy to see that in a movie. And I thought they handled that affirmative consent doesn't make you a slut. It doesn't, she never gets shamed for like leading him on, right? Like he's like, nor actually does he get shamed for losing control.
No, she chuckled a little bit, but she didn't say anything. Yeah,
and there's a strong sense that they like remain friends and they are like, okay, cool, this happened. Everybody's okay with everybody's sexuality. Like,
right.
You have your feelings, I have my feelings, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, and do we wonder if maybe like millennials are definitely being portrayed here as being far more progressive than their parents. So at the same time that we've got these very progressive, sex positive young men and women, their parents are, to comedic effect, like kind of bumbling around behind them with these very outmoded ideas of what's okay for women or young women and what's okay for young men, and how those two are different, starkly different. I don't know. Is that true to life? Do we think millennials are actually more progressive in this way?
Well, I think these young kids are considered generation, what do they call them? Generation Y or Generation Z, something like that. But that generation after millennials, it's true that they are more progressive than any generation before them. So that part rings true. But, I guess appropriately, I'm not too well versed on the sex lives of kids this age. So I don't know how true to life it rings.
Good to know. We're both glad to hear that.
About their, penchant for slut shaming and stuff like that. I'm not sure if this is true to life. Because like I said, you figured you'd have at least one boy that's a little bit more inappropriately aggressive with the girls about taking their virginity and stuff like that. And you didn't see that here. So I'm not sure how true to life that is. I don't know enough about teenage sex lives to say.
I will put this in the show notes. I can't remember if it was a This American Life episode that actually talks about like sex ed and sex positivity in school. And I think, again, the thing this movie shows that never actually happens. But I don't fault the film for not being realistic. It wasn't trying to be. Like, on the girls' side, it was, again, I think it was really trying to model, like, this is how this can all be done. And no one has to freak out. And everyone can feel positive about the experience. It was like a radio story about teaching sex ed. And the idea of affirmative consent was so anathema to, like, the young boys that the person was giving this instruction to. Because once they talked about it, then like that was going to be the end of the world and mood killer, and nobody could like move off from that point. Like the boys were absolutely terrified to have any kind of honest conversation with the girls that they were dating or in relationships with about sex. Like, and I think there is still really, I think we've gotten closer to a sense of equality where, boys and girls, like boys think that girls have sexual urges just like them, but not really. Like the dominant narrative that the girl's job is to say no and the boy's job is to pressure her, like still applies. And that's where like, I say, I really admire the movie for taking on affirmative consent of saying, look, girls like sex too. You can actually have affirmative consent be sexy. Like, it doesn't have to be the, like, yes, not at all sexy, very awkward Sam and Chad where he's like, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this like, that is the version that everybody thinks is terrible. But you could have it be like dirty talk, you know? And that, you know, it's like, oh, I want to do this thing to you, you know, like whatever it is, and describe it and make it sexy. Like, it doesn't have to be this weird, awkward contractual moment. But I think that teenagers are still a little bit out of their depth with that stuff. That's
Adults
my supposition.
Too.
But again, also not an expert in teenage sex.
Yeah.
So let's go to something that maybe we're a little bit closer to, although none of us have kids. I actually thought, again, the movie was surprisingly nuanced in how why the three parents actually end up wanting to police their daughters' bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all seem to have their different reasons, didn't they? But I mean, it boiled down to the same thing, but they had their own kind of flavor, their own scenarios.
I didn't feel it boiled down to the same thing. Did you, Garrett?
Not at least not with Ike Barinholtz.
Yeah,
he had a different reason. He thought she was being pressured into having sex when he knew that she wasn't attracted to boys, and he thought she was doing it to, you know, sort of fit in with the crowd, and that's what he wanted to stop, rather than her just being sexual in general.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like that was like at the front of his mind. But he gets like red in the face, like when he up until at the point where he sees her kissing Chad. He's like, oh, she's, you know, my daughter's gay, and, you know, she's not gonna be hooking up with any guys, so blah blah blah. I'm fine with it. But then he sees her kiss a guy, and he loses it. And it wasn't just like, oh, she doesn't seem to be liking that. I hope she's not being pressured. It was, he was pissed. And that's something that, like, I just feel like that goes a little, that's more kind of primal and visceral than what he said his reasons were.
Okay, I read that scene differently because she turns away and she makes kind of like this awkward face of disgust after the kiss. I saw him getting really angry at her reaction to the kiss.
Yeah, it's possible.
I thought he stayed true to his motives, but
I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, Stacy, I think you're saying that while he did say the reason why he got so mad was because he felt she was being pressured, you think that subconsciously he only got that angry because he saw her getting close with a guy.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The mother's motivation seems to be primarily one of she's way too attached to her daughter, and that this is a step into adulthood, and she doesn't want her daughter to take any steps into adulthood.
And not just steps into adulthood, but steps away from her.
Right.
And down a path that she's walked before and made mistakes, so she's fearful her daughter will do the same.
Right. And then I think there's a really problematic moment in the movie where, so each, you know, after, at the end of the night, each of the respective parents manages to meet up with their daughter and have a conversation about why they've basically been on this, you know, madcap chase to prevent their daughters from having sex. And there's a moment where John Cena is talking to his daughter, Kayla, and she's like, why are you so against this? And he just says, I don't know.
I thought that was very poignant.
I did. I liked that, actually.
Because to me, it got to the heart of America's Puritanism with sex and why and how people take in these ideas and this pathos about sexuality just, you know, by osmosis and being enthralled in American culture. And when you really ask them, okay, why are you so against, you know, your daughters having sex? Like, why does this bother you so much? And I think a lot of people would be like, really, if you make them sit down and think about it, they don't know. That's just what they've been taught to do, and they've never really thought it through. Like, it's just what they feel like they're supposed to do, particularly with their daughters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's just been indoctrinated with like all of these societal hang-ups, right? And most people I think would have, said, oh, well, it's because, I care about you and I want what's best for you. But it was very humble of him to just kind of stop and go, actually, I'm not quite, fully aware of all of these like dynamics that are playing into, how I feel about this. Like I don't actually understand it.
Yeah, I see your point. And when he first said it, it was like, oh, that's really great. Like, now he's going to have to stop and think and really unpack all these misogynistic messages. But then they don't go the one step further. Like, he goes, I don't know. Yeah. And they leave it at that. And I was like, oh, wait, no. Come on now. Like, you've just backed off from actually saying why it is men think that they own their daughters' bodies in this way. And I was frustrated. I thought that, again, the two of them played the moment beautifully, like really beautifully. For this being a comedy, most of the emotional beats hit really well for me. But I thought, okay, you have a chance to actually make a real statement about, I guess his wife does a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she touches on it. If he did like go on some long soliloquy about patriarchy and stuff like that and ownership of women's sexuality, would that have come off as too preachy?
May have been inauthentic.
Do you think that's why they avoided doing it, particularly in a comedy?
I would have liked a little bit more of, him being like, I don't know. And then some sort of like, I just feel a strong sense that like, you're mine and my job is to keep you like away, like pure or something. Just one step beyond that. No, I don't think like a whole soliloquy unpacking the history of like, of that. It would be necessary. But I thought I wanted a little bit more. But then when Ike Barinholtz has his conversation with his daughter and she comes out to him, I was like a blubbering mess.
That was a mess. Yeah, no, that was really sweet.
I'm totally with you, Stacy. Everything I've seen Ike Barinholtz in, he's done a good job. He's sort of proven that he can hit those emotional beats, like, and just a quick note, like I IMDb'd the woman who played John Cena's wife, and I was like, oh man, she's just been around, because I was like, she looks familiar, and then I'm like, oh yeah, because she's been like, she played a doctor on this TV show, and then she played somebody's like detective on that TV show. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing I've ever seen her in consistently. Mm-hmm. And I was like, good for her. She's in a major motion picture. So, social impact score.
Oh, right. Social impact score on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being it changed nothing and 10 being the world we once knew is gone forever. Garrett, what do you think?
I'd have to go like a 1 probably.
Oh.
That's not a slide in the movie.
I think it might be, but go ahead.
It's not a slight on the movie. I just don't think, like, I don't see what it could change. Like, it's doing pretty well. It's doing decent at the box office, but I don't think it's going to be like a cultural phenomenon to where like things change socially. At least that's my reading on it.
Okay. It's so hard to predict with teenage movies. I'm going to give it a solid 5. Like, I think this will get a lot of like play on TBS in the movies. Like, I think which one of you said that teenage movies, since they're sort of John Hughes' heyday, there have been a couple of really landmark, memorable ones. I think this could be one of them. Like, I think it was funny, it was good, had a lot of good feels moments with the parents. So, and, for, again, displaying 3 very different versions of affirmative consent, that teenagers can model, I'm willing to go as high as a 5.
That's so funny. I'm actually splitting the difference between you guys. I was going to say 3 for all the reasons Nicole mentioned, but with all the pessimism that Garrett has, it did moderately well for a comedy at the box office. So presuming that it kind of chugs along in a normal fashion, if enough teens see it and enough parents see it, and kind of question what their preconceived notions. Maybe, who knows? Yeah, maybe it could help out in a few ways for some people.
Okay. Tell us something that we should see or listen to or watch.
I'm going to recommend A Quiet Place. It's the it's the best movie I've seen so far this year. It's one of the most tense movies I've seen in a long time. It's tense from the very beginning. They really set the stage for what happens, and it moves throughout the rest of the film. It plays a lot like a silent film, the first half, and the sound design is incredible because everything's silent except for the environmental noise and everything that goes on in the background. It's extremely well done, and you should see it. You can handle how scary it is. It's worth it because of everything else surrounding it, and it has a lot of heart too. It's about love as much as it is about fear.
Okay.
At what point through the movie do you actually hear someone speak?
Ooh, it's close to like almost halfway, like a third to halfway, somewhere between then. Yeah. They speak, when they speak, it's in sign language and it's subtitled. But when you hear someone's voice, it's almost halfway through the movie.
Interesting. Okay.
So the sound, it makes the sound design incredible because all the sound comes from their environment, the creaks in the floors when they walk, the sound of the grass when they walk through it, stuff like that.
Neat.
Okay. I'm gonna post something because it didn't come up, but there's a really good article in the New Yorker from Molly Ringwald about rewatching The Breakfast Club and just sort of giving a nice history of teen movies, John Hughes' legacy in that area, and her understanding of her own legacy, seeing the problematic parts that have come out. It's a really interesting read, and Molly Ringwald's is in fact a very good writer. So I will put that up for people to read.
Does she mention not another teen movie?
No. She does mention Scream though.
Okay.
Scream series.
All right. Well,
she mentions how female sexuality, and it's like, yeah, it gets you killed in all those 80s horror movies. Which is like a trope which Scream took on. But yeah, it was good. Alrighty. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes and recommend it to your friends. Check out our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com, for links to things we've discussed and to visit our store. If you want to talk to us, leave a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter with our tag @MoviesMatterPod. And please check out Garrett's website.
Cinema Babble. You can find it at cinemababble.com. That's just the word cinema and the word babble, B-A-B-E-L. And I have a Twitter and Instagram under the same handle, Cinema Babble, and Facebook also is Cinema Babble. My Twitter is actually The Cinema Babble.
Yes, and we're both fans.
Yes, we are, so you can find them through us. Check Twitter to find out what movie we're overanalyzing next. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.
Did you ever go on vacation with your family and hope the dance instructor would fall in love with you?
No, but I did think a guy with a giant boombox playing Peter Gabriel outside my window in the middle of the night meant true and undying love.
Listen to our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, where we revisit these movies and it turns out they weren't the best ideas.
What were you thinking?
You can find our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or your favorite podcatcher.
You can also tweet at us at HEAMCAST, Heamcast.